have you, bro.
What's going on, everybody? This is Dan French, and this is another French Workbench podcast. We have a guest in studio today. He's a real estate attorney, and also we have a real estate agent, because I was looking at Brett.
Only difference is law school and non-law school.
That's right.
Just a small difference, man.
So in studio,
You're smarter with your money.
No, I wouldn't say that, man.
in studio we got Brett Jenny. He's from Simply Vegas. He's on Chuckett's Crusoe team, and you guys are crushing it over there. How you doing today, Brett?
Good, man.
All right. We also got Michael Quebeman, right?
Yep.
And
Wow.
he's from Reisman and Sirocac, right? Real estate, is that right?
Well, there's no and in there, but yeah, you pretty much got that.
I pretty much. Oh, so it's just that name.
Just Reisman Sirocac.
Okay. Is there two different attorneys with that name? It's two different people, right?
It's a husband and wife team,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So today we're going to talk a lot about what's happening around the city with why somebody would need a real estate attorney, and when you would hire somebody like Michael Quebeman. And also we will talk about fraud, and we're going to talk to Mike about how he got into the business. And, it's kind of ironic, Mike, because we were just talking, and Brett's from Wisconsin. You're from Wisconsin. So kind of give us a rundown how you got started in all this.
Sure. So I was going to law school out in Wisconsin at Marquette University.
Yeah.
And,
Good law school, man.
Yeah, not bad. So
It's good law school.
What's nice about going to law school in Wisconsin is that you can, once you graduate there, you don't have to take a bar exam. So that was an easy place to get started once I graduated. So stayed out there for about 3 years. Worked for a wholly owned subsidiary, a U.S. bank, just doing mutual funds, doing a lot of different finance stuff that way. And then I had met my wife in law school, who's from Las Vegas. And she wanted to move out here to be closer to her family.
No kidding.
Yeah.
That's
Wow.
So, so that's why we made the move out here. Got started working for a firm, actually doing marijuana licenses, that sort of thing. So basically,
business is booming with that, man.
It was. So, but after a while, unfortunately, it wasn't.
Yeah.
There was a little bit of a slowdown, and I needed to find some new employment. So that's what brought me to my current firm.
Gotcha.
So, we've dealt with a lot of the short sale process in the past. You guys dealt with real estate attorneys, right, Brett, in the past when you were doing?
Yeah, they were in our same office.
Yeah.
Well,
Really?
A couple of their associates, yeah. So, his paperwork says we just walked down 2 doors down and handed it to them. So, the head attorney, was off of East Flamingo and stuff, but. Yeah.
So
We did like 400 a year. It's enough to have an attorney put someone in your office.
Yeah, that's big, man. That's big numbers, right? I mean, it is.
They're getting an average $5 to $10 grand a pop. The attorneys were, yeah, dude.
So, Mike, why would if somebody's out there,
400.
we just had a situation where we had a gentleman that needed your services, and he was going through the loan process with me. Obviously everybody knows I'm a lender with guarantee rate. And when Mike was calling me, it's kind of unique because Mike was trying to, I think, add on, right, some plat map or some type of addition to the property that we just purchased, and you were helping with that, correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
And so for me, I just wanted to find out and see, some of the challenges that you come in with, and this situation is a perfect example. Can you elaborate on just a little bit on how that worked, and then is that something that's normal, like a normal practice that you help people with?
Yeah, so this situation was maybe a little bit more complicated than the usual one, but I think part of this project that we were working on is a little bit of an offshoot that we've started to see a little bit more of in the area, which is a lot of golf courses.
Yeah.
Starting to look for different ways to find money because of, I guess this is just another one of those things millennials are killing.
Yeah.
Is playing golf. So these different neighbors that were all along a golf course, they all...
Was this in Red Rock?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
So, but it's kind of happening in a lot of different places. I think either the golf course itself is shutting down entirely, and then somebody's coming in and developing the land, or they're selling off portions of it or whatever. So this was just a portion of the golf course along these different property owners. And so these 7 different owners, all decided they'd go in on this transaction together. And so what's tough about that, and why we were reaching out to you guys, is it's uniquely within this particular situation. Each property owner who has a beneficiary, or somebody who owns the land through a loan, a mortgage, the mortgage holder had to sign off on us adding the land to the to their property.
Gotcha.
So whether it's increasing the size of the land or decreasing it, whatever we're doing, if we're changing the size of the land, they had to have their beneficiary sign off on it. And the reason why I say that it's a little bit unique in this situation is because it was it's only really required in the instance that you have a homeowners community, like I'm blanking on the word right now, but yeah. So, in that situation, we needed to reach out to you guys. And so we've had to do this a couple of times. We were just about ready to record the final map.
Sure.
And one of the property owners sold.
Yeah.
And so that was your client, and so who bought it. And so we had to do this whole process over again. And we're really hoping that this time we don't have to go through that again. We've got, a little bit of some murmuring that another one of the owners is looking at selling.
Yeah.
And so we're really trying to get this closed before that happens.
So the homeowners got together, cleared it with the HOA to buy more land because the golf course is no longer a golf course, or there's land that can be used.
Yeah, they're just looking at different ways to try to,
So the HOA is cool with them. They all got together, said, okay, we're cool with you set owners here, and you're almost done. But then one of the pieces decides to sell,
right?
And now you've got to go back and do the whole thing again, or just that one piece?
Just with respect to that one property.
Okay.
So there's been a bunch of different things that we've had to do in order to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
We had to hold neighborhood meetings and all that stuff in order to try to get things approved with the different.
Gotcha.
Because there's just a bunch of different entities that all have some sort of say in it.
So when they hire you guys go about like contacting the association saying we're setting up meetings, and you guys set those up? Is that like part of the procedure or one of the?
So we have to do that. We have to, whichever the local government is, in this case it's, Clark County.
Mm-hmm.
We have to reach out to them and let them know that, the zoning is changing. So we have to apply for, a zone change amendment as well. And all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So, with the Clark County Comprehensive Planning Department or whichever planning, if it's the city of Henderson,
Do you have you encountered any issues with that, since they're kind of understanding that these golf courses aren't what they potentially were, so people are trying to make the best of it? Are they copacetic with that, or are they fighting that?
So that's actually, it can be a point of contention, because a lot of these people, they move alongside these golf courses, especially if the golf course is shutting down.
Yeah.
And the developers coming in and
that's what I mean. Like once that's kind of already happening, and they're kind of already lost the benefit of why they bought on the course. Like for instance, these homeowners were trying to get more land.
Right.
So
yeah, and in this case,
is Clark County cool with that happening?
Yeah. So usually so I would say that generally when you're working with a local government, with a regulator or an agency, a department, usually they're willing to work with you on things.
Gotcha.
I think a lot of times when you look at this sort of stuff, you can look at the local governments and say, oh, it's just a bureaucracy. They're just here to get in the way or whatever.
Right.
But I really don't see that as the case. And I think
they want to work with you.
Right.
It's just don't be a jerk and be professional and have your stuff together. I gotcha.
Right, exactly. So it's usually not them that are potential obstacles. It's usually the neighbors. And so that's what I'm saying.
I can see that.
Is with the neighbors, like especially, so there's a golf course, Black Mountain, that shut down.
Yeah.
They entered bankruptcy.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if you guys are familiar with that.
Same thing like Queensridge.
So what ended up happening with that?
So, and this isn't necessarily something our firm worked on, but I'm just familiar with the situation.
Sure.
And what ended up happening was the golf course shut down. It went into bankruptcy, and an investor came in to try to buy it out. And the whole purpose of buying the land was to separate it off into chunks and start selling it off to this, some of the different bigger, landowners in the house
builders.
Yeah.
That's right. So as they were doing that, you say that people started to resign themselves maybe to the concept that the golf course isn't there anymore. Well, that's not the case. So a lot of the neighbors were saying, we want somebody else to come in and buy it.
No, I can only imagine, man, because these aren't people like. So that was kind of always my thing. Like that's big in Madison, Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Right. The consumer has you want to do this, you got to ask the neighbors and have these meetings. And to me, it's like I get that. Don't get me wrong, but then it's like, okay, you're asking a bunch of people who really have no clue.
Yes.
About the business or the overall perspective or picture.
Yeah.
And a lot of people who are just hateful or negative people in life in general. So they're going to have a problem. No matter you go right, they're going to say, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like,
Yeah.
you know, all these people get a say. And so I understand why, but at the same hand, they don't know what they're talking about.
Well,
so why do they get a say?
And nobody was going to come back and buy that property and say, I'm going to turn it back into a golf course.
That's the thing. Like, no one's going to deliver what they want.
Right. But they wanted to hold out until somebody would come along and rescue the course. Yeah.
They're going to be dead because there's a lot older. Anyways, I know that demographic.
Yeah. So, I mean, and then you run the risk of people starting to move on to like squatters coming and moving onto the property because now it's derelict and all that stuff. So there's all these complications that come along with it, and really the best use of the property is to start building.
So what happened?
The transaction, as far as I'm aware, is still in the process right now. But it it's always one of those things. Like you've just got people that don't want to.
Is that
change.
something like a city council or something can just override? If there's ignorant neighbors who just won't jump on board eventually?
Well, ultimately, it's not the neighbors that do have the say. It is the city council or whatever governing body, the board. But obviously, they represent, their job is dependent upon those votes and that support. So you really, like I said, I think especially in situations like that where the writing is kind of on the wall and it really looks like when you take a dig into the financials and you realize that there's really nothing. There's nothing keeping it a golf course.
Yeah, there's nothing to salvage it. It's they no longer here. Yeah.
Behind the scenes, they'll tell you, listen, we truly understand where you're going with this, and we want to be supportive. But you also need to help us out here. You need to be coming up with financial analysis. Yeah. You need to provide as good of information as you can, so that when we go on the record in support of this, we can have something to back us up.
That's legit, right? I mean, it's like you buy a golf course property for a golf course property, things change.
Yeah.
And, I mean, if that was me, I can understand.
I can say this. So I know that there's some rules and regulations that you have to follow if there's a squatter, right, in a house. And I don't know if, Brett, you used to deal with this a lot, right? Where it was like there was people squatting in the house.
I used to apply it to Law 101. I'd walk in, hey, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, right. Get the heck out.
You got 2 seconds before. No. We used to call Metro all the time.
Yeah.
So when I moved out here in 2009,
you just got to throw a smoke bomb in there or something, man.
Yeah. This city was littered with squatters. In fact, so now they have forms for it. The GLVAR, and they never used to. Like when I moved out here in 2009, it was like you called Metro and you hoped they would show.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, one time it was a foreclosure on East Bonanza. Dude, I kid you not, this thing was selling for $22,000.
Oh my God.
Dude, so hold on. And like my business partner and I, we go to go walk it in. And the thing about my ex-business partner, Kevin, he was from Wisconsin too, right?
This is like a Wisconsin party right now.
Dude, this guy, dude, this guy was a huge German. He was like 6'4", 240, no fat.
Is that where everybody goes?
All muscles, just huge. And he was like, we walk in, there's like 2 squatters. We're like, nope, because you didn't know. So we called Metro.
Yeah.
About 45 minutes later, they go in and they come out with like 5 people. One of them was like a federally wanted like felon, like criminal or something. And we're like, all right, no, that's why you don't go in.
Yeah.
I mean, that's Metro's job, man. But
well, I think because there's people think that you can just kick these people out, right? I mean, they got certain rights. Is that right? I mean, somebody's sitting there and
those you can, but if people have their illegal stuff together, it makes it
harder, right?
Yeah,
There's some who know how to documentation, and it's a civil matter, so cops are like, oh, it's civil.
Yeah, I don't know. This isn't really something that our firm deals with, and it's not something that I've personally dealt with even prior to that. But I know obviously if somebody's in the house for a long time, there's certain basically like a statute of limitations where if you live there long enough, but you also have to be holding yourself out as a property owner, so you should be paying taxes and all that kind of stuff too. So most people don't end up. They don't end up hitting that threshold because people usually see long before then and call the cops.
Correct. Yeah, that's a 2020 episode or something like that with a long way. And those are only once in a while, but yeah, for the most part, it's not that hard. They're squatters, man. And you can tell with the burnt carpet and the crack pipes and maybe they're not a paying tenant. I don't know.
That's funny, dude.
Yeah, I haven't seen squatters, and I mean I haven't seen vacant properties for forever. like for squatter, you know.
Yeah.
There's no, I mean, if you bring up the foreclosures, I still have people who are like, oh, I'm looking for a foreclosure or short sale. I'm like, talk to me in a couple years. I mean.
Well, so if you go back and if we're looking at some of the fraud that you've seen in this city, right? And have you got some stories, right? I mean, there's been a lot of stuff where maybe you said you had some examples of things you could talk about that people were committing fraud or attempting to commit fraud. Is that right?
Yeah.
Is Vegas kind of notorious for that?
I mean, I wouldn't say notorious. I think, you know,
I would.
yeah. Where there's money, you know, there's people who want to steal it. So
Interact, need a check?
Yeah, that's your
One call, that's all.
Nice
Hey.
plug, man.
yeah, hey, that's not us, man.
Dude, I know. I was just saying. Like, that's how much.
That's the wrong firm to plug.
Yeah, well, that's how much goes on in this town. As an example.
Do you guys-
'Cause I'm a
you
regular
guys-
dude. I
do you
have
guys-
these things memorized.
Mike, do you guys have a slogan?
No, we don't. We can come up with one today if you want.
Yeah.
Workshop it. Yeah.
We'll workshop it. Dude, we could, you just plugged it.
Want your work done by geniuses?
Yeah.
Give us a call.
Yeah, right.
One email, that's
that-
all?
that's-
I don't know.
Just like doctors. I mean, you have a specific need to like.
What email?
There's attorneys, dude. There's so many attorneys in this city that are injury related attorneys.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So many, right?
Well, and the other thing is their business model is totally dependent upon the number of people that they get
Yeah.
coming in the door.
Yeah.
So advertising for them is huge. If they're the number one result when you Google them or whatever,
Yeah.
like that's their entire business model.
Yeah.
Is because they're not making a ton on everybody. They're making a little bit on
Yeah.
a bunch of different people, and every once in a while they've got their home run. You know,
Yeah,
you
they're
see
not
that on
getting
the.
a $10 million lawsuit every time, dude.
No.
They're not.
So
yeah.
they're it's a machine. Yeah,
They know the system basically, right?
right.
They know the system. If you can follow, let me give you an example. I had a fender bender about 5 years ago.
Okay.
And when I say fender bender, when I hit the lady in front of me, I mean I got out and I took a picture of her bumper, and there wasn't even a paint mark from my car on hers, let alone a bump. She gets out, oh hey, whatever, blah blah, older lady. Well, come to find out, this lady was an insurance adjuster. So
Jeez.
I didn't know this at the time. And so 2 years go by, I hear nothing from 2 years, and it's just like, okay, a fender bender, and all of a sudden I get a letter from old Richard Harris.
Oh.
Old
Well,
Dickie
you know
boy.
what's crazy?
And
Yeah.
she had basically from day one went to him because she knew what to do,
Yeah.
and had $60,000 in medical bills
Yeah.
that were all verified. I mean, it followed the procedure that you need to. So from my understanding was, if you know the system and you know the game of how to play that, so they hit Liberty Mutual, and they got $300,000 from my insurance. They didn't go to court. And I said to my insurance company, I said, I sent you a picture where there's not even. They're like, it just must have cost them more money to go to court but what I'm saying is, Richard Harris Law Firm knows that.
Right.
Like, they know the system so well. They know what they can get away with, what they can push, I mean, it was insane. And they end up getting $300,000 for not even a scratch.
Yeah.
I was like, wow. Well, hey, you know what? If you know a system that can reward you like that,
Yeah.
And
it's easy money.
Yeah, and it doesn't always work out that well, I would imagine. But again, yeah, I'm not talking from experience there.
No, it was mind blowing to me. I was like, I had pictures, and the law firm that was representing Liberty Mutual didn't seem to care. They're like, well, we're not going to. I'm like, all right. I even yelled at them, but I guess I don't have a say in the
that's not
attorney.
up to you. Yeah,
No, it's not.
definitely.
It's the insurance company. So, found that out too.
Yeah, you were asking about fraud, right?
Well, we were talking about fraud.
Yeah.
We were talking big time about fraud, but
Dude,
yeah.
$300,000, dude.
Listen, we're going to go off topic just for a second. We're going to come back
Sure.
to the fraud, but it's crazy because there's a lot of, seem like in this city, there's a lot of like hit and run, right? And then like, you ever see that, like where people are hitting a car and run
All the time, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sure it's a big in every city, but man, it just seems like it's a real issue here,
Because I've never been a place in my life. I love Las Vegas, but I've never been to a place in my life where people simply don't look before they cross the street. Dude, I remember growing up in a small town, Wisconsin, of 800 people. And my mom was like, look both ways before you cross the street.
Classic. Yeah, that's a mothering cliche. Like, if you're not telling your kids that, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah, but it's, how do you explain that? How do you not see a car come, like, even if they're going fast? If you're standing next to a bus stop and a drunk driver comes up on the curb and pops you, different story.
Yeah.
But how do you not?
Yeah. No, it's.
I don't understand how you don't see that.
I think they probably see it, but I think it's also too like that split second where maybe they're distracted, they're on their phone, or I'll be honest, there's a lot of people.
Dude,
that are
if a
doing
car is
DUIs.
even close to me, I'm not walking in front of it.
Yeah, you deal.
I mean, it's common sense.
yeah.
No?
No, it is. It is. Mike, have
Don't
you?
get hit by a car. Yeah.
Sounds
good.
Look
Yeah.
before you cross the street. I just,
Yeah,
surviving 101.
yeah.
It's good advice.
Thank
So
you.
let's go back
to
to
write
the-
children's book.
Yeah.
Let's go back to fraud. Okay,
Don't
so
get
we're
hit.
talking fraud, and we're talking about your
Johnny, don't get
your
hit.
situation. So,
Yeah.
give us an example of when this has actually happened.
Okay, yeah, and this is not necessarily in the residential context, but this is definitely, the first thing that comes to mind for me. I was the firm before this. I was working, like I said, we were doing a lot of marijuana licenses.
Okay.
And so that's definitely, like you say, is Las Vegas notorious for fraud? I think there are certain industries that can be notorious for fraud, and especially where you got, it's not necessarily, in my opinion, the fact that the marijuana industry deals with drugs
Yes.
that makes it a big target. It's that it's a highly regulated industry where there's a very small number of people that get a license, or and so the difference between success and failure can be really dramatic because you either get the license from the county or you don't,
Yes.
or you get the license from
Was
the
a
state
lot
or
of
you
that a
don't.
favor game?
So it was definitely a black box, right? Like
Yeah.
they said that they've started to try and be a lot more transparent about it, and I think that's really a good aim. I don't know how transparent they can be.
I mean, listen, it's like anything. Let's just use common sense. If you're a who's who in any particular place, spot, or town,
Right.
and something new's being brought with this kind of money involved, you're going to get first dibs. That's just the way it is.
Well, yeah. I mean, I
I'm
think,
not saying right or wrong, but
networking can definitely help. And even in this situation, the fraud that we ended up running into wasn't even with regards to how the licenses were given out. But I guess the point of starting there is just that because there's such a smaller supply and the demand was so high that I think people started taking chances on things that they probably knew in their gut really weren't up to snuff. And so, in this scenario, we had a client come to us and they hired us, unfortunately, after they've already started the due diligence process, which is kind of a no-no. I mean, obviously being an attorney, I have a little bit of self-interest here in saying hire us as soon as possible.
Right.
what do you mean due diligence to who?
So the idea there is that when our client, when they had found out that there was a license that was available, that you start negotiating the terms of the deal and all that stuff, and there's that due diligence period where for about 60 days, 90 days, whatever you agree to, you say like, okay, we're going to kick the tires, we're going to go through the files, we're going to go through your financial records, all that fun stuff.
Okay.
We've already seen a very little bit of what you're willing to show us. But in order to see anything more, we need to now enter into this purchase and sale agreement or whatever, and once you sign on the dotted line that way, and usually once you give a deposit,
Yes.
which in certain instances is non-refundable, as we'll find out.
No kidding.
Yep. Yeah. So
You better be pretty damn sure. Sorry.
yeah. So and that's why I say you should probably hire an attorney before you get to the step of signing the dotted line.
Yeah.
Because in this scenario, the license was for north of $1 million. And I got the managing partner came into my office and said, I'd like you to do a little bit of research.
What do
on
you mean
this.
north of $1 million? They had to pay $1 million to get the license for it?
Eventually.
So is that a bidding war?
If they had completely gone through the deal,
Okay.
they would have paid over $1 million in order to have the license.
With all the fees and everything involved.
Right, exactly. So yeah, not to mention the attorney fees and everything else that they were paying as
Wow.
well. So these licenses are worth a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so,
Wow.
you like I said, I think people started looking at these licenses and going, like everybody wants to get into this. Like it'd be so easy. Basically, they were saying like it doesn't matter what price level I get in at, what where my entry level is. There's only up from here.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, they started. People started following deals that I think they probably knew in their gut. They're like, this probably isn't like. Here's a good example. Usually when you get involved with a deal like this and you're dealing with a substantial sum of money, the deposit in this case, the down payment was $200,000. And so usually when you're talking about that kind of money, you're dealing with an escrow agent. You're dealing with somebody where you're gonna have a separate third party that holds on to the money, and then once the deal goes through and all the conditions have been met, then you're ready to close. Then at that point, then the escrow agent, sends one thing one way and the other, the money one way and
Yeah.
the title or the license or whatever the other direction. And in this scenario, at the last minute, they said they were having issues with the escrow agent that they had selected or whatever, and they were saying, well, if you wouldn't mind just paying it to our personal account.
Who is saying that?
The seller was saying that. Like just sell.
Oh, it's a private seller that's
It's a private seller that's selling this
Gotcha.
license. Yeah,
So
sorry.
he already had the
Yeah.
license and okay.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, sorry
Dude,
if I
that
wasn't
is
clear
good
on
business.
that.
Yeah.
So they had
Buying
had
license.
originally gotten the license, and they were then turning around and trying to sell it. And it was in
gotcha.
it was in a county a little bit further north here. I can't remember the exact name of the county now. Like I said.
Okay.
Still, from Wisconsin, still figuring it out.
Yeah.
So even though I've been here
Dude,
for like
I'm-
three
dude,
years.
I've been here 12 and I'm still outside of Vegas.
So, yeah, Tonopah? I don't know.
Dude, yeah. I was in Beatty for the first time like 3 months ago. I was
Yeah.
like, that's interesting.
Not that there's
Anyways,
anything wrong with it.
Yeah,
It's just that I don't know all the names
Take
yet,
small
so.
town Wisconsin, put it in
Yeah.
the middle of the desert, high desert, bro. It's
Yeah.
kind of eerily like Hollywood, but
So anyway, so these guys, they said at the last minute, right before they were about to put the down payment in, they said, well, we're having issues. Do you mind just sending the $200,000 to our personal account? Anybody in their right mind?
I just talked about this. It's almost like
my God,
it's almost like wiring money to a personal account.
so let
that
me
you
guess.
can't-
They,
right, that
let
you
me
can't
guess.
get
They
back.
did that and they lost the earnest money.
So they definitely did send.
Wow.
They wired the $200,000 to these ladies. They just to write to their personal account, and they said, "Well, we've got this purchase and sale agreement. They signed on the
That'll
dotted
be- yeah,
line.
yeah.
Like there's really, this is still a win-win for us because they're clearly serious.
Just because it says you're owed something
Yeah.
doesn't mean it's not going to be a pain in the you know what to actually get it.
Yeah.
Right.
Right? That's
So,
the thing.
so they wired this money.
So they wired the money.
Okay.
And then they hired us and said,
Oh,
"Hey,"
dude.
and they said, "This is the transaction." They're pleased with themselves because they've started this whole transaction. They probably thought, we saved a little bit on legal fees by
Yeah.
not getting them involved in the beginning.
Yeah.
We already
Dude,
negotiated
so
the
stupid.
deal.
I want to save on legal. Okay.
And yeah, honestly, I can't tell you what they saved, what they thought they were saving at the beginning of the deal, but by the
Yeah.
end of it, they definitely hadn't saved anything. And so, like I said, our managing partner came into the office and he said, "Hey, if you wouldn't mind, just, we were planning on taking that license and transferring it to a different county."
I see.
And when you do that, you have to look at obviously the policies for each local government. What they're usually they have like a business department or a business license department,
Yeah.
and if they have allowed marijuana licenses or other like highly regulated licenses, they will have their own policies set up as to exactly how that's done. There's usually like a little bit of money that's involved. There's some forms and stuff that happen, and so I said, okay, sure, it's a pretty standard thing. And unfortunately, as I started digging into it, I had to, make calls up to the county. Very quickly found out that this particular parcel was already involved in another lawsuit.
What?
And so,
Isn't that crazy?
so I had to call. So there was.
This wasn't their first rodeo trying that.
So, so technically, it's wire fraud, right? Isn't
Yeah.
it?
So they literally were using these licenses to get people's earnest money.
Well,
Yeah.
and what's really sad about it all is that what happened is the state approved it first, and the state approved it conditionally, saying that it's conditionally approved, barring local government approval. And so it was basically like a conditional license on its own without the local government approval. That's worthless.
Wow. So
And-
you need to get the local government approval to make
And
it
the state
make it
approval.
legit.
Right.
Wow.
And so when I started looking into this, I was like, okay, well, obviously you put your thinking cap on and you
Yeah.
go, well, they've already put $200,000 in plus whatever attorney fees they're paying us.
Sure.
And let's try and see if we can make this work. Let's see if we can get the local government approval for this. And so I started digging into what those requirements might be, only to find out that they had already decided a couple of years earlier, and this was okay throughout the state. All the different local governments were going to decide independently whether or not they were going to allow marijuana establishments and what type of establishments, whether they were going to be, like dispensaries or, no recreational facilities, only,
So they had already denied it years before?
they'd already met, the local government had already met, and the city council or whatever had said, no, we're not going to allow marijuana licenses. So that license
So they
was,
knowingly were selling a license and collect that they knew. Oh
That
my
was-
god,
it was dead in the water.
Dude,
It
isn't
would've
this,
never-
It would've never
like
got
this is
passed,
what
right?
this is what amazes me. So it's funny that you say you come from Wisconsin. So me too, right? That was the first thing that was like hard for me to adjust and adopt to out here. is there's straight up thieves and fraudsters in this city. Not that there aren't in Wisconsin.
Yeah, I think
but
they're
people
everywhere,
like
but
you know what I mean. They are everywhere, but Wisconsin's more. You know what I'm saying.
Well, I think it's because it's
So, dude,
Yeah.
well, maybe different because you come from an attorney world, which that's what you deal with is a lot of times. But for me, I was like, man, the balls that people have is like to do that to somebody else is one thing. But like, dude, they won't even think twice about it. And to finally accept the fact that like you can work with somebody or talk to somebody that can just you just have to accept it. And once you accept it, you're like, yeah, that exists in this world. Because that's crazy that somebody would knowingly do that and just go about their business of that's how they make money. Think about that.
Right. So, and
sorry.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I even went through the process of going back through the minutes, right, for the different meetings, the council meetings and whatever to see what they had discussed and whatever. And as it turns out, the owners of the license and the property that it was attached to had gone and tried to petition the local council to say, hey, would you mind reconsidering?
Yeah.
And so there's really no doubt that they knew what had happened. And when it became clear to them that this slip of paper was essentially worthless, they said, okay, well, we're just going to go ahead and try and do a fire sale and get rid of the land and get rid of all the improvements we've already started to make on the land.
Oh
they had
my
that
God.
some like
So
grow
they started
containers
doing
and
that?
things like that.
Jesus.
So they tried to sell everything off, and then I think at some point they realized, what if? Hold on, before we start
Why
selling
would you not get
everything
an
off-
attorney when you're doing all that in this business,
Right.
dude?
Well, so let me say this: is there no way where you can
Man.
hire an attorney after all that's done and try to recoup all the?
Dude,
So you're looking at
they're
you're look-
jumping in the game later.
I know.
They're not allowed to get them with the game plan, which is where they're most effective.
What I'm saying is, can you somehow get somebody to help you kind of start back to the beginning and get that whatever that money was back, what they put up initially, or is that?
So we were looking at least $100,000 in legal fees in order to try to take this to trial or whatever.
God, shut
and the other thing is that they ghosted us. So they as soon as
Wait, who ghosted you?
the sellers did.
The
So-
ones that hired you? Oh no, the other people.
So we were hired by the
Well,
buyer.
of course they ghosted you, dude.
Yeah.
You got an attorney
Right.
calling your bluff. An attorney knows what they're doing.
Right. So, and what's really funny about the whole situation is that once we finally told the client, we said, please don't say anything.
Yeah.
Don't say a word.
Yeah.
Let's just proceed because we need to have all of our
Yeah,
ducks
yeah,
in a
yeah,
row.
yeah.
That by the time we finally do the big reveal and go, we know you're trying to cheat us.
Yeah.
We want to be able to move right away and kind of do something about it. And so they had sent out an email saying, just letting you know, your due diligence period is coming up tomorrow, is ending tomorrow. We're looking at another installment of $200,000 as per the agreement. And of course, when our client saw that, that set him over the edge.
Then they got the balls to send that.
Yep, that set him over the edge when he saw the email.
Oh,
and so
yeah.
he immediately responds like,
I don't think I can be quiet.
Like, F you, I can't believe you'd have the nerve to say something like this.
Give me your address.
Yeah,
Right.
And
Serious.
that was basically enough to send him underground. And last we knew, they had moved out to Texas.
Wow.
So it was one of those things where now you got to cross state lines in order to try to serve them.
So realistically, you think they'll ever get their money back?
No.
No. So here's the thing too is you got to look at you say shady people in Vegas. There is, but
Yeah.
I think because it's a very transient city.
It's
there's a
just
lot of-
West Coast.
Well, no, right?
You know what I'm saying, dude. They ain't
But
saying
listen,
that.
Sounds like a
Wisconsin-
Midwest bias to me.
Yeah, right.
I've been out here 12
think
years.
it's-
I love
I
the West
think
Coast.
it's-
I'm never moving back, but
I think it's
aces in
everywhere.
their places, man.
I think it's everywhere, like he said. But I do think that Vegas, because it's so everybody's transient, everybody's going through, and maybe they're just trying to make a quick dollar. It's a hustle town, man.
It is.
It really is. I mean,
100%.
yeah. So it's like if there's a way to make a buck,
Well, that's the thing. I'm not heartbroken.
yeah.
Like, I knew what I was moving to.
Well,
Maybe
like-
not to the extent, but I mean, listen, it's not, it's Las Vegas, baby. I mean, you come here. I mean, I came here to succeed and make money.
And it's a gray line.
Yes.
It's like a gray area.
100%.
Where, once you start down that path of saying like, okay, I'm going to do certain things in order to try to make some money, and you have to, right? Like
Yeah.
you can't
Yeah.
you can't just be totally straight laced and straight cornered or whatever. You
Yeah.
gotta
Where's that moral compass come into play?
Yeah, right, exactly. So
sounds like it
What
doesn't.
direction you want to?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? I've a ton of morals.
And I can at least say for our firm, we're ethical and whatever. And generally speaking, the concept is that attorneys are held to an ethical standard, and whatever we're coached on that pretty hard. There's an ethics portion of the bar exam and whatever. So that's not to say that you don't run into attorneys that are unethical.
It's in every business.
Yeah,
you know?
right,
I
exactly.
mean, I think it's like anything. It's like it's like regulations that are in place in any business, whether it's lending or attorneys or real estate. I think 97% of everybody in any business have no problem abiding by being moral and ethically going about their business. It's the regulations are set up for that 2 or 3%,
Right.
that just
Well, I think
don't care,
obviously,
because the rest of us are like, that's cool. I wasn't going to do that anyway. So
Yeah.
well,
I have
laws
no
are put in
problem.
place because people break them. You know what I mean?
That's what I'm saying.
Exactly.
But
I mean-
it's like criminals versus non-criminals. Like 90% of society are law-abiding citizens.
Yes.
It's that 10%, but it's always going to be a percentage.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you got to take care of that.
If you let a human, they will.
Yeah.
Well, with anything.
Like I said, if you're talking about residential loans and what I deal with, I'm just going to kind of marry the two, like talking about fraud, talking about wiring fraud, right? So people do the same thing. They actually email people this has happened before at my company, where they email people saying, wire your money to this account, thinking they're wiring their earnest money deposit to the title company. And it's going to a totally different account, and it's happened a couple times. One time they caught
for wire fraud?
For wire fraud.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's huge, dude. In real estate
wire fraud.
Yeah, man. We're basically, I don't know how they're able to do it, but the scammers basically are able to know when a transaction goes into contract at a title company and when the escrow is being opened, and they're able to access like the emails and everything. So they're like one letter off for the email, whatever it is. And so now they say you got to basically call a title company before you wire it to make sure that they send it, because there were a couple people lost like $100,000, couple $100,000.
Right.
And they wired it to some private party. And
Yeah, and if you're, this is your home or whatever that you're
Yeah.
trying to buy or whatever, you don't have
you're
that
not,
kind of money to
especially in
lose.
this market, you're not going to mess around. You want to get it done because
Right.
you don't want it gone.
Yeah,
So-
you got that time crunch. That
Dude,
that
it's crazy.
pressure.
It's crazy. Think about how sophisticated you are with your setup. Like, that's kind of brilliant. I mean, if they applied that to something good, I mean, Christ,
Right.
they might be running this town. I mean, to have it set up so that when an escrow is being opened with a title company and that everything looks like it's basically seamless with who you are.
It's happened enough where
they've had to,
they've had to talk to us and say, and then there's clients that call and say, is this legit? I've heard a big increase in wire fraud going to, or earnest money deposit going to different accounts. They'll even send it.
Those are people that wear masks everywhere. I'm just kidding.
So let's go over what Mike's website real quick. I want to see Mike's website. So this is Sophisticated Business Lawyers, and Mike, this is the website that you currently have. Let me ask you. So other than obviously you deal with Encompass a lot. So give us like a rundown of all the different things that you handle.
So, like I was saying before, I think maybe it was before that we started here, but our firm is kind of split in two. We have a couple attorneys that work predominantly on the litigation side of things. So once you get to trial, and then we have, trying to avoid going to trial as well. Obviously most things don't end up in going to trial, but then you've got the other half of the firm that deals with transactional work, and that's kind of the stuff that I deal with, and I think that's probably most relevant to your listeners, just in the sense that we deal with business licenses, we deal with like you were talking about before, this residential deal where we're adding land to people's properties, that sort of thing. So we do real estate, a lot of different things that way. So that's kind of what the firm does.
So let me ask you a personal question, not a personal question, but like a business question as far as being an attorney.
Yeah.
Because I hear all crazy stories about attorneys' lives. So
they're all true. No.
Nice. I knew I should have been an attorney. No.
Well, an attorney wouldn't lie to you, so
right?
If they told you, it's true.
Neither would a realtor.
No.
Or a lender.
Yeah, right.
Bunch of upstanding folks.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Everybody's got their agendas.
So, dude, do you guys seriously work till like 10, 11 o'clock at night every night? Sometimes.
Sometimes.
All the time?
Sometimes it all depends, honestly, and it depends too on what you're doing. For some of the litigation folks that work on our side, like if we've got a brief due or something like that, they'll be up, till the wee hours in the morning, Saturdays and Sundays as well.
Really?
Because the big thing there is those documents, and
what's a brief?
So like if you have a motion to make with the court, or if you have some sort
What's
of
that, a request?
Yeah. So like if you
you're using me another attorney, Lord.
Yeah. Sorry, I gotta
okay. So
use different vocab here. So, but anyway, it's
I'm a realtor.
It is a document that you file with the court. No. So, and it just, a lot of times with the big ones will be, setting out the parties' cases on either side. So if you've got, if you're alleging a bunch of different things, it'll be a complaint. And so you'll go through and it's the legal research behind it and all that stuff. So you got to come up with all those different things. And,
like a term paper.
Yeah, exactly. So just like a big, huge document usually, and there's word counts and things like that, I suppose. But generally, it's a lot of work. And
I bet.
and there are they're pretty strict deadlines. You can ask for extensions and things like that.
But they're
usually
okay.
Yeah, well, and the other party usually has to agree to that kind of stuff. So
gotcha.
So you combine a really a lot of work under a very strict time schedule.
Okay.
And so whether it's 11 o'clock at night or 2 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday, whatever it is, those guys are getting it done. So. So
what about you, man? You put in quite a few hours?
Yeah, but I would say it's a little bit more regular. It's not quite a stop and start.
Yeah.
Because like with those guys, they'll file something, right? And then there's usually a little bit more of a lull, and they can kind of focus on some other things and whatever. And then it's kind of it's a little bit like a tennis match, right?
Where your part is in the trial.
Yeah.
What part you play depends on.
What's the longest trial you've had? I
don't deal with litigation. So,
okay, so what's the longest trial that you've been, or your company's been a part of?
You can't handle the truth.
I don't know. That's a good question. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you do like research and stuff, or
I'll do some of the research behind the scenes, do some of like the preliminary drafting and stuff like that, especially because I'm one of the younger attorneys in the office.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, they'll kind of rope me in on. Yeah, exactly. They'll rope me in on some of that fun stuff. So, I'll work on that kind of stuff. But then for the transactional side of things, like I was saying, where you're like working with a purchase and sale agreement, or you're working with filing stuff with a local government for a license, or trying to get a zone change or something like that. Like I said, that's usually a little bit more regular. It's kind of like just as long as we have clients coming in through the door. Okay. Those are pretty consistent.
As long as they're coming through the door and they're being serviced.
So you do a lot with the zone change like that? Is that something that's probably one of your big parts of what you do?
Yeah, I would say it's a decent part of our business. I think like a lot of times, they're using let's use Clark County for example. The Clark County business planning, the comprehensive planning department, they accept these applications for, it's like a land use application is what it's called. And so it's like zone changes, all sorts of different variances, vacations of easements, all that sort of stuff where like there's just different people or different entities that may have rights on your land that you're trying to change. Okay. Or, because like a lot of, like one of the things I noticed, like we're talking about differences between Vegas and other places. One of the things I've noticed out here is that there seem to be a lot of, like entitlements or patent easements or things like that, like things like the federal government.
Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, sure.
People don't know what a patent easement is.
So generally what I'm talking about is where like a governmental entity will have a right to enter onto your property, or will have like certain mineral rights on your property. Like if somebody ever finds gold on your property or something like that,
the government could have come in and
potentially, and it depends. It's if they have like
on your own property.
If so, and you'd have to have like generally what's called like a mineral easement. So it'll say like if you ever get a title report, basically if you go to a title company and you ask for a report on your parcel, which is what you'd have to do if you were to sell it or whatever. Yeah. And somebody like attorneys will go through and review it and look to see what all the different things are sitting on your property. If you find something like that, basically what that is that's this was all stuff that was set up way back when this was.
So does that apply to a lot of the new home builds? Because aren't the developers getting that cleared before they
should probably
build the land?
They would probably figure that out the way before, wouldn't they?
Well, that's what I'm saying. But I mean, so technically.
So yeah,
like you buy a new house in Summerlin, where I live.
Yep.
And Howard Hughes Corporation has owned that for years and years and years, and they all the way up to the mountains they own it, right? That hasn't developed yet.
Right.
So you're D.R. Horton, and you come in there and you pay, I think what the average builder's paying $750,000 an acre,
something like that. Yeah.
Bro, think about that. People want to know why expensive and live in
$750,000 an acre,
and they still got to develop it, bro.
That's crazy.
That's just like that's like I got buyers like, oh, I want an acre in Summerlin. I'm like, break out the $5 million.
So why is the land in Summerlin more expensive than say a land somewhere else? Why is it?
Howard Hughes Corporation has owned all of that land.
Yeah.
In fact, I think Summerlin is like Howard Hughes' mom's maiden name or something like that.
Is it because of future sales? Like they know like the house is going...
Because they control it, basically. So it's the same reason why is a Range Rover so expensive? They're kind of made like crap.
No, they are.
They break down all the time, but they have such a high... Because they control how many are made, they control what it is. So all of that land is owned by Howard Hughes Corporation. When they started developing it in the mid-90s, Summerlin was just a master plan community that they wanted to build. So since then until now, they've made it like the second or third best master plan community in the United States to live.
Yes.
I mean, I live in Summerlin, dude. When you drive through Summerlin, aesthetically, it's very, like, it's amazing, right? Mm-hmm. And then they own that land going all the way out to the mountains. So they could release all of that land at once and sell it anytime they want, but they don't. They purposely only release like 150 acres here. And then next year, like 200 acres. And if they feel that it's building too quick or they want to restrict it more, they'll only release a certain amount. And even with that being said, say you're D.R. Horton and you're like, okay, I'm going to buy 100, I'm going to buy 60 acres and I'm going to pay basically 35% more for land than I am anywhere else in Las Vegas. Once you do that, then Howard Hughes Corporation gives you a booklet of like 350 pages of rules and regulations. Says you want to build in here. So a single story here, you can't have a single story across the house. You can't have the one. You got to have this. You got to. I mean,
it's the same as buying a house, almost, right? It's almost like the CC&Rs,
I mean,
right?
but that's why, because Howard Hughes Corporation has such a tight control over it that they've. I mean, listen, you can't argue when you drive through Summerlin. It's awesome.
So going back,
so that's why, because it's all controlled and owned by the same company forever.
Yeah, but it's going to be. Is it about it's a desirable place?
And they're good at their business.
Well, it's desirable. Why. You said it's controlled, but is the land, because it's desirable, is why they can sell it for a premium?
So interesting fact. I don't know if this is true or not, but I heard, I say that with a grain of salt, is how Howard Hughes actually got that land was in like the 50s or 60s or wherever. He had just moved out here, and all that land out there, he basically took a rock, like a little pebble from out there, sent it to DC as a mining claim, and got all that land for free because he sent it in as a mining claim. Because you got to understand, at the time, Las Vegas is where Fremont is.
Yeah. Right.
So imagine Summerlin. I mean, dude, you
know what?
Yeah,
listen,
it takes you 75 miles an hour. It takes you 20 minutes.
Summerlin, though, let me say this about Summerlin.
To get to Summerlin from there.
Summerlin wanted to be its own city. It's part of Las Vegas, but they were talking about having it. Like they almost want to be separate.
So a lot of people, for real estate wise, always buyers say, well, I'm deciding between Henderson and Summerlin, but I see Henderson's like ranked as like the 9th best city to live in and blah, blah. I'm like, that's because Summerlin is not its own municipality. Summerlin is still part of Las Vegas. So you want all the gangbangers on the east side and all that stuff, that gets included in Summerlin statistics.
So they want to
because
separate it.
Yes.
And
Henderson is a separate municipality. So what happens in Las Vegas for crime and all that stuff doesn't apply, or schools.
That's why Henderson is one of the safest cities, right?
Yes.
Because
but if you applied that same municipality standard to Summerlin, it would kick Henderson all over.
Mike, so
my personal opinion.
You're talking about, let's go back to the easement part. So you're saying that's what you deal with a lot with the minerals. Well, let's say it's
and like that sort of stuff. Like a lot of times, people aren't super concerned about those sorts of things. I mean, those are like if you're gonna file, with the Federal Bureau of Land Management or something like that to try to get that stuff removed. That it's expensive, and honestly, at this point, like all the mineral rights basically that you would want out of the ground have already pretty much been taken. Like those are things that have been on the property since way back when a lot of this was first set up.
Can the government come in and do eminent domain?
Certainly, yeah, and that's not an easement or anything
Absolutely.
like that. You know, they're you know, if the government really feels like they need something, obviously they can pay. They're supposed to pay what they consider to be market value.
Market value, but that's yeah. So that's
There's
Who does that?
quotations around that.
Yeah,
one.
who does
varies.
that audit, right? Who does the audit for that, right? Like, how do they get that? How do they get the number for that? Is it just who
I
goes
have no
out?
idea,
and-
dude.
So as far as I'm aware, I think the government, they usually will get an expert, you know, to come out there and
An
whatever.
appraiser that works for
A
the
sur-
government.
it's a surveyor.
So not that he's
Yeah.
biased. He
Probably a
works for the
surveyor,
government.
right?
Right. So
Surveyor.
and in that scenario, they usually get what they think can be like, you know, the best use for the land or whatever. I would be surprised. I'd love to know exactly the percentage.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine it's anywhere close to 100% of what you'd be able to sell it for if you did it
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
So you do a lot with easements. We know we have an easement that is where, you know, power company. They have
Yep.
an easement to come on and check the power meter, right? What other easements and what other things that maybe you would be involved with besides that? Is there any other things?
Yeah, well, and I can even bring this back to what we were talking about earlier about the golf courses. When the golf courses decide that they're going to go from being a course to being residential property, there's all sorts of easements on there. Like, for example,
Oh yeah.
for
55 plus community. Is that something that they had to deal with? Because
That's not really in 55 plus.
no, but a lot of them have golf courses and they have
But
residential property.
those aren't the ones that are.
No. I'm just saying similar to something like that though. Is that not true?
yeah, if you're taking the land that was originally a course, yeah,
Yeah.
like you know, a lot of times what these these companies that, or it's not really, you know, owned by a company, it'll be owned by like a, you know, board of directors or whatever, but like the company that manages it, what they'll do is they'll agree with the city, for example, to use gray water, which is, you know, it's not drinkable, it's not potable water, but it's stuff that's been already maybe flushed once or twice.
Yeah.
And so instead of going and like repurifying that or whatever, they'll make a deal with the city of Las Vegas or whatever municipality. They'll make a deal with them that they'll reuse that water. And so like they'll have ponds or whatever that are on the site. And so in order to hold that water there, that's then used to water the course or whatever. What they will
Like a
do,
retention pond?
yeah, like a retention pond.
Okay.
There's an easement for that pond for the city to maintain that and all that sort of
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
And so when you end up taking that land and you say, well, clearly we're developing this all as residential property. We don't need this pond here anymore. We don't need this gray water. Trust me. And so what they'll do is they'll say, okay, well, now we need to go and work with the city and try to get this easement removed.
Sure. Okay.
So and part of what can be challenging about that is depending on how this was all constructed, like the documents that were used and whatever.
Yeah.
Some of this stuff, it was recorded, you know, 60, 70 years ago.
Yeah.
So in
it
a
can be
case
really rough.
In a
to
case
read.
like that, how long would it take
it
to
can
get
take,
it resolved?
Oh, it can take a couple months easily.
Oh,
so
okay. Okay,
it's-
not
it's-
like a couple of years or something.
Well, I mean, when you're talking about this, like the totality of taking like a 100-acre golf course and like
Gotcha.
You know,
well, something on a smaller scale.
yeah, like
Okay.
you know, when like for this particular issue, that in itself to resolve could take a couple months, but. You know, yeah, it's just a matter of working. Like I said, you know, the municipalities are usually pretty cooperative with you.
Sure.
So it's not like they're sitting there going like, we're going to do whatever we can to make your life difficult. And so in that scenario, you know, it's they're just saying, you know, we just want to know, like, we want to come up with a price or whatever, because usually you end up having to like pay to have them like remove the easement and all
Got
that
it.
sort of stuff. So.
Well, we dealt with one, and you were very diligent. I can see kind of what your role is. We're going to wrap this up because we've been on here for about an hour, but I do want to bring you back on because there's other things we can talk about. This is just kind of touching the outside surface
Sure.
Of things. And as always, you know, I appreciate you guys coming in. It's an early Saturday morning. And so we'll go back real quick. I just want to let everybody know this is how you can get a hold of Mike right here, Mike Quebeman, and he's with Riesman Surikak.
Yeah. Bingo.
That is right. There you go.
Good job, man.
Yeah, man, I'm getting better. Well, I think I am anyways. So anyways, if you guys want to get a hold of Mike, Mike, how can they get a hold of you, man, if somebody wanted to get a hold of you?
So they can call our offices. I can, you know, I don't know if you want me to
I'll
give
put
them
my
my
information
email.
in the comment section. So
Yeah.
if somebody wants to get a hold of a real estate attorney, sounds like you guys do really good work. And you know what?
I mean, I think we do.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Mike
From
was
Wisconsin, he's got my vote already, dude.
Mike was on
I
it
know
all the time.
Morley. I know Morley. He's all good, dude.
Well, Mike
Yeah.
was when I was going through that process with our deal. Mike was constantly involved. He was constantly updating me, and it's weird
It's
because
because all Wisconsin does it, man.
dude, I'm telling
you, dude.
Wisconsin, yeah, you guys got it going on over there.
Like,
right
I
now,
love
so.
this place, but I'm glad I was raised in the.
Hey, my wife's from here. I think she's pretty great too.
Well,
Yeah, man. And the
okay.
thing is, look, we're having a
Hey,
Wisconsin.
Your case, it's hard to argue.
She's going to be listening to this probably, so I got to say
Hey,
something
man,
nice.
Vegas is, hey, dude, it's a great place.
We'll have Mike back
I'm just
on.
saying I'm not ashamed to be from Wisconsin.
I appreciate Brett coming back on. Had a fun time here. So guys, we'll check this out
I
again.
just want to say,
yeah.
buy Bitcoin and Litecoin. Thanks. Go ahead.
All right. We'll be back Tuesday. And you guys have a great weekend. And thanks for tuning in with us. We'll talk to you guys soon. Thank you for watching an episode of the French Workbench podcast. If you want to tune into past episodes, please subscribe to my channel now. Also, if you want to look at our audio-only options, we do have iTunes and SoundCloud.